Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to my 3 Takeaways episode from the Dean Hall interview this past Monday. Me and Dean had such a great connection almost immediately when we started talking. We're both basically just so passionate about what we do and are so intrigued and so motivated by what the other does. So I think that's really cool. Make sure you go check him out on at Swimming in Miracles on Instagram. Again, at Swimming in Miracles, and you can check his website out right there as well, swimminginmiracles.com. Him and his wife are both absolutely amazing, and I hope you guys just enjoyed his stories from the crazy swims that he's been on. I mean, this guy had leukemia and lymphoma and basically was down in the dumps. His wife had passed away that he had been married to for 30 years, and he had to find a way to bring himself back to life. And these couple of challenges of swinging the Willamette River and then swimming the River Shannon over in Ireland just rejuvenated him and brought him back to life. And I'll get more into that here in just a second. So let's get right into my 3 takeaways. Number 1 is purpose can bring you back to life. And this is what I was just talking about. I mean, this was the theme of the episode and the theme of the show. I loved that quote that he said, purpose can bring you back to life. If there's a time when you're unmotivated, look, I'm unmotivated a decent amount. We're all unmotivated almost every single day, every single week. We have to find a way to get in touch with our purpose, whether that's just like spending quiet time with ourselves and really asking ourselves like what we want, or maybe it's like watching YouTube videos, maybe it's being immersed in some kind of energizing content, whether it's video or podcast. But it's really important to figure out what that purpose is. I mean, like for Dean, when he realized he wanted to find something to provide his daughter that she could be proud of her dad for, and then he found this challenge that just really rejuvenated him, he's completely changed his psychology and completely changed his energy just towards life in general. And I think that's really important. Like for me, that's kind of how I have to get motivated every single morning, is I have to get in touch with what it is I want out of that day. I have to remember my purpose for the day. I need to remember my intention for the day. And that is what brings me to life and energizes me day in and day out. Takeaway number 2 is be careful what you ask yourself. I thought this part was absolutely fascinating, how he mentioned that the brain, by its very nature, has to answer every single question that it's asked. And that is so important. Like that can be so helpful, but can also be such to your detriment. But if you're aware of it, then you can be more and more intentional about using it to your benefit. Because every single day we ask ourselves like, why us? Why me? Why am I this way? Why am I that way? And we just set ourselves up for failure by putting ourselves down like that. But I really loved his action steps. Make sure you go back and listen to the interview where you can hear the action steps. But the main one that stuck out to me is flipping the question from a why to a how question. Because when you ask how, you start to take ownership of it. Like, take this for example. If I'm saying, why am I this way? Why am I that way? Why am I only capable of this sort of a thing? It's like, no, how can I use this to my advantage? How can I take this thing and run with it? How can I take this as experience and flip it on its head? Because when you say how, it gives you ownership and responsibility for doing something about it. Because if you just ask why, you're in the victim mentality and you're not going to go anywhere with that. Takeaway number 3 was brown shoe versus black shoe. And you kind of have to hear the story during the interview about this, but just real quick, he had a client when he was a therapist, so he's still a therapist, but he had a client teach him that you have to give the person that you're asking a question to an option. Like if you're selling shoes, you can't say, do you want to buy a pair of shoes today? That's never going to give them any kind of prompt to say yes or no. You have to say, do you want a brown shoe? Do you want this black shoe? You have to give them options, because when you give somebody options, it gives them a sense of control that they can do what they want with the situation. And so for me, I've had a huge lesson with this, but I've kind of learned that early on. Is when I first moved to Nashville, I started to try to get out in the community as much as I can, meet a bunch of people, have coffee meetings. And then when I started this podcast, I had to start booking people for interviews. And so those are the 2 things that I really learned this from, because when you're meeting with somebody or when you're trying to set up a coffee meeting or a phone call or an interview, you have to give somebody options. Like everybody is so busy every single day that you can't just say, do you want to meet, and expect them to say, yes, at this time, I'll meet you here. You have to give them maybe 2 days and maybe one time each day, or maybe a time range within a particular day. If you give them options, that gives them a feeling of control, that they can take ownership of the situation and decide yes or no. It's got to be a one or the other type of question. So again, guys, my 3 takeaways. Number 1 is purpose can bring you back to life. I think the main action step here is if you feel not motivated, find a way to get in touch with your purpose. It could be sitting in silence every single day and just being, what is my intention for today? What is my intention so that I go to sleep a little bit better than I woke up? And if you put a finger on that, then that's going to bring you back to that life, and it's going to prompt you to the action steps in order to make that happen. Number 2 was be careful what you ask yourself. Switch your questions that you ask yourself from a why question to a how question so you can start taking ownership and responsibility for situations. Takeaway number 3 was brown shoe versus black shoe in a lot of different scenarios. If you're in sales, if you're trying to book a coffee meeting, if you're trying to, whatever it is, make sure you give the person that you're asking questions to an option. Option A or option B, maybe option A, B, and C. And he talked about it in relationships as well because it gives the other person a sense of control and a sense of ownership for the situation. I hope you guys really enjoyed this episode with Dean Hall. What a connection I made with him. I absolutely love that man. We had such a great talk before the podcast and after the podcast, and he's turned into a good friend that I know I'm going to stay in touch with, and he's going to have a big impact on my life. So make sure you go check him out on his website, swimmingandmiracles.com, on Instagram at swimmingandmiracles. I hope something that he gave you today allows you to get closer to the best version of yourself. If so, make sure you subscribe to the show, make sure you rate and review it, and make sure you share it with a friend, because I try to bring on some of the best people in the world, in my opinion, to help you guys get more clarity on what the best version of yourselves looks like and provide some tools, tips, and inspiration on how to get closer to making that person a reality. So all I ask is a quick rate and review, or maybe share it with a friend who you think might be able to be impacted by it. Other than that, guys, I hope Dean Hall, I hope maybe these 3 takeaways allows you to get closer and closer to your best you.